All right, everyone, we are back again with another segment of All Things Real Estate. And today we are on site. We're in Pawtucket. We're on site at a property on Vine Street. And what we're going to do is kind of take you through the property and explain the good, the bad, the ugly, the kind of ins and outs of, of a property, of a house. So this is our first hands-on production with the show, with myself again. Again, I'm Kyle with Keller Williams Realty, and I'm here to kind of bring you guys through a house and explain the good, the bad, and everything else in between. So today, if we want to start kind of get walking, we'll walk around the outside and check out what we have going on over here. Like a typical house in Pawtucket, this is an older house. It's a Cape Cod style house. It was built in the 50s. A couple things to look for when you're looking at properties like this. You want to look on the exterior. So the first thing I point out is the siding, right? So right now you have wooden shingles. So these are all wood. If you see in here, right, so it's wooden shingles that have been painted. So typically on a house like this, when you have a shingle of this age, you're going to have to paint that every 3 to 5 years, right? So this house was probably painted 5 years ago. There are some spots that are kind of coming apart and peeling, so it's definitely due for another period of time when someone comes in, they scrape it down, they paint it up, and they make it look fresh. And the reason you would paint it more frequently than you would paint something else or anything else inside or whatever is the weather. So we're in New England. We have hot, we have cold, we have sun, we have snow, we have rain, all that stuff that wears and tears on the shingles here, and this protects the shingle. So that paint, the more you paint it, it protects the shingle. So that's the biggest, most important thing from the outside when we look on the body of the house and we look all the way up this property is shingles all the way throughout. Now, the other thing we look for when we look at a property like this that has a lot of wood is we look at the windowsills. So here, right, so where my hand is, so you can see there's a little bit of green kind of moss or algae on the windowsill, so it needs to be cleaned off a little bit. But here is a windowsill, and the biggest thing with this is you look for rot. So if this windowsill is solid, that's a positive, right? So rot would be, it'd be mushy, it'd be squishy. You could kind of put your hand through it. And what that means is that there's water penetrating there, and that's going to at some point get into the property and get down through the walls in the insulation, and will definitely be a detriment to the inside of the property. So we have the body of the house, we have the windowsills. Next to the windows, very kind of trivial, but we have the shutters. These shutters here, these are wooden. A lot of the new houses now, they have either vinyl siding and then vinyl shutters, a wooden shingle, and wooden shutter. Again, the same thing with the shutter as the body of the house. You would typically scrape and paint this every couple of years just to kind of go with the flow of the property. And while we're on the front, what I'd like to show you the next thing, kind of one of the nuts and bolts of the property, which we talk about is electrical. So here, right, so right here is our main service cable. So this service cable takes the electricity from the pole, brings it from the pole, brings it into the house, into the meter, and then down to the 100 amp circuit system down in the basement. So you've got an electric meter here. This thing's always spinning, electricity's on, people are using it. So that's what this thing is. So when you see this on the front or the back of your house, this is an electric meter. It measures the amount of electricity you use, and that's how you get your bill, right? So your bill from either National Grid, Columbia Energy, or whomever comes from off of this meter, which reads the amount of electricity that you actually use. Service cable, the thing to look for here is we typically look to make sure this cable is intact, right? So this can be frayed. So there's a jacket, right? This is what they call a jacket on the outside of the service cable. And that jacket can be somewhat frayed, but it's really important that the cable below the jacket is in good condition. If you're in good condition there, it's protected, which is good. That's what we're looking for. So again, we have the meter, we have the cable. Those are the two big components of the electricity on the outside of the property. Another thing, so we're in Pawtucket, like I said. Pawtucket has a mixture of old, new, refurbished, whatever. This house was bought maybe 10 years ago. Someone went through it, flipped it, rented it. Now it's back on the market for sale. One of the things that's important we look at when we buy these things, whether you're an investor, whether you're a regular buyer, is the bottom where my foot is. So right here, right, that's called the foundation. Why is that important? So that is a cement foundation, right? Cement is solid. We like cement. So the different types of foundations, you can have cement, you can have brick, which will look like regular bricks that you see in your property, and then you have mortar, cement kind of in between the bricks. And then the only other thing that I typically see in the field is stone foundations, right? So we have field stone. So a field stone foundation is going to be a bunch of rocks that go together and they make up the foundation. This is a good situation. It's cement, it's much more sturdy, it's much more durable, and there's very low chance that we're getting water in that foundation because it's newer. So with that, we'll take a walk into the house and we'll start to go kind of inside and take a look at some of the things inside. Now we've kind of encapsulated the house. Let's go inside. Let's take a look at one of the most important things for a house when you live in New England, right? Heat's really important. So how is this house heated? So if you look down here, this house is heated with ducts, right? And ventilation and ductwork. So it is forced hot air, right? So what does forced hot air means? It means in the basement, there's a furnace. That furnace provides hot air that runs through ductwork, comes out of these vents, and then heats the property. What is the good thing about forced hot air? The biggest, most important thing is that it's very, very easy to add central air to a forced hot air system. And the reason is because we already have the ductwork. So a buyer, an owner, a tenant, whoever, doesn't have to add the ductwork in the walls to get the central air. So you'd have to add the unit outside. You'd have to add an air handler in the basement. But the ductwork is already here, and that makes a big difference. So again, the different types of heat that we have, here is an example of forced hot air. Another example is what's called baseboard. Baseboard heat is if you look at your house and you look along basically the floor, you're gonna have these 6-inch baseboards that run across the floor and kind of connect from the wall and the floor, and they run what's called forced hot water. That forced water heats up the baseboard and then spews out heat. Okay, so we have baseboard heat. The other form of heat that's common in older houses in Pawtucket is steam heat. Steam heat is when you have a radiator. It's a big silver radiator that basically pumps out steam heat and it heats up the room. Steam is the most efficient style of heat, but people typically don't like them because the radiator can be maybe about 1 foot to 2 feet wide and then maybe a couple inches, 6 inches deep. So what it does is it takes up a lot of room in the house. So you have steam heat, you have forced hot air, you have baseboard, and then the only other thing that typically can be used is what they call electric baseboard. So it's similar to a baseboard system, except it runs off of electricity. When you have that, you don't typically have, you're not gonna have a gas bill, you're not gonna have an oil bill. You're gonna have this electric baseboard that runs again across the floor, and then you're gonna have thermostats to turn them off or on. So that is an example of the heat that we see in this house. While we're on the first floor, what I'd like to do is, I know the sun may be tough to see, but here, if we look at this window here and we pull up the shade, if we can, I don't think we can, but I'll do it manually. So what we have is a vinyl, right? A vinyl replacement window. Windows typically, right? Older houses, windows can be wood. They can have the pulley system. They can be just the old wooden windows, single pane, or they can be double pane windows. This is a vinyl replacement window. It's more efficient. It's better for heat. It's better for central air. It keeps everything insulated, and it's probably, let's say you owned a house and the house had all wooden windows. It would cost you anywhere from $200 to $400 to replace a regular size window like we see here. So if this was wood and we had to replace this, you're looking anywhere from $200 to $400 depending on what sort of window you purchase to kind of buy as a replacement. To show you two other things while we're on this floor. Here we have the electrical outlet, right? So we do have the electrical outlet. One important thing to look for when you're buying a house, and I saw this yesterday, I showed a house yesterday, it was old, it was on the east side, the house was beautiful, everything was great, it was $600K. Here's one of the big problems. This has 3 prongs. One here and then 2 up above. House I went into yesterday had 2. That means it's not grounded, that means there's no neutral, right? So that's important. This is very important to notice. So this house has 3 prong outlets throughout the whole house. Most likely the outlets are grounded, right? Doesn't necessarily mean that, but it means that, you know, there's a good chance that they could be. So when you see the outlets and you're looking at a house, definitely pay attention to that. Pay attention and understand if it's 2 or 3 prongs and what does that mean for you going forward. If you look here on the wall, everyone in their house has one of these, right? That's important. What is it? It's a thermostat. And what does it do? The thermostat does is it basically turns the temperature up or down based on, you know, how hot or cold you want the property, and it runs the heat. So this situation with it being forced hot air, this T-stat right here would be used to actually turn the heat up. Now, it's important to note, if you have one thermostat and 2 floors, so again, one thermostat and 2 floors, that means that you have one zone of heat. So this thermostat is reading the temperature for the heat, is going to call for heat when it gets to that temperature on this floor. Your second floor could be colder because the heat is not traveling up there because it already says that it's warm down here. So it's very important if you have a 2-floor house, typically to have 2 zones of heat. So we like to find that. As a realtor myself, like to locate 2 thermostats in a 2-floor house, and we'll look downstairs and we'll see how many zone valves there are. But again, that thermostat nowadays, you know, you don't have them like this too much anymore. They have what's called the Nest. I would highly recommend it. The Nest is basically a technology-friendly thermostat. You can do it from your phone. You can do it remote. You can do it anywhere you want at any time. You can speak to it. You can talk to it. It's a Google product, I believe, so it runs hand in hand with some other Google products. So again, the Nest thermostat I would highly recommend if you're looking for efficiency and you're looking to kind of maximize your efficiency, minimize your cost. So as we continue to walk, we are entering into the kitchen. We're in a small 1950s Cape Cod property in Pawtucket. Some people, you know, that are cooks, this can be very important. Obviously, we all know what this is. It's a stove. This is a gas-fired stove, right? So you have 1, 2, 3, 4 burners, gas-fired. What does that tell me? That tells me that in this property, there is a gas line, whether it's propane or whether it's natural gas. There is a gas line, and that means that if my heat is running off of oil, I can definitely transform it to gas because I already have the gas in the house, okay? So we've got a 4-burner stove, microwave with a vent up top. Here we have a double sink, right? So we've got a double sink here. We have a regular kind of white fridge that some folks, you know, could swap out. You could leave it, whatever. We have oak cabinets. And then one important thing, this is actually important. So nowadays, when a lot of people do flips, there's really a few different countertop styles that people can use. This is Formica, right? This is the most inexpensive sort of countertop that someone can utilize on a kitchen. So this Formica is used, it's the lower end, it's the lower grade countertop. Some Formica can look like granite. Don't confuse it with granite. Some Formica can look like granite, but granite is a stone. It's a natural stone. It's more expensive, and then you can get into your quartz and your marble and whatever other sort of countertops that you're looking for. You know, now we're heading into the bathroom area, right? So 2 things I want to talk about in the bathroom. Number 1, anywhere there's water, whether it's a bathroom or a kitchen, the outlet should be GFIs, right? The outlet should be GFI, and that is to prevent any issues if the water gets into the outlet. There's an automatic kind of trigger that stops it from, you know, from you getting electrocuted, from any issues with the electricity. So if you look over here, there's a reset button, there's a test button. That's very important that your bathrooms and kitchens have GFI outlets to make sure that you're well protected with that. And then finally, you have, you know, you're gonna have your shower, you're gonna have your bathtub, you're gonna have your diverter, you're gonna have your spout, you're gonna have your drain, and you're gonna have your shower head. All those things are things that people would check on a home inspection. Your inspector would check them, make sure they don't leak. It's important to test those mechanicals to make sure they don't leak so that you don't have any trouble in the future. And that is all in the bathroom. All right, so we are in the basement and we are gonna kick it off with the electric panel. So here, typical 1950s Cape, electricity was updated at some point. They brought the panel up to 100 amps. That's sufficient for the size. It's about 1,000 square feet, maybe 1,200. So you have 100 amp circuit breakers there. All your breakers are intact. Your main is up top, reads 100, good to go. Biggest thing with older houses, right? Some houses used to have what they call fuses. That's not good. That's a no-no. We don't want that. Other houses have what's called knob and tube, which is older wiring that can cause fires. Insurance companies poo-poo that. They're not interested in that. So if we see that sort of stuff as a buyer, as a seller, as an investor, we really look to kind of take that out, right? Knob and tube, fuses, all that stuff has to go to make sure that safety and protocol is in place for the next person to purchase the house. As we continue to walk through the basement, here we have our forced hot air furnace, right? What's the difference between a furnace and a boiler? A furnace does forced hot air, a boiler does forced water or steam. So this is a gas-fired furnace. Your gas line is here, your emergency shutoff is here. So when you see that red thing at the top of your stairs or down by the boiler or furnace, that is just to cut off the system if you don't want it on. Typically that's done in the summer. So again, forced hot air, ductworks above my head, gas line going there. And then as we migrate over to the corner of the basement and we kind of come this way, now we have our washer and dryer hookups. So here we have what's called a 220. That 220 outlet is for your dryer. Your dryer has a plug that plugs right into there, right? And then you have your vent for your dryer to exhaust out, right? Your ventilation, your exhaust going outside. It usually goes through the basement window. Here is your hot and cold for your washer. So typically your washing machine and your dryer are going to be next to each other. We have a hot, a cold turn on. We have electrical here. So that, that's where the laundry would be hooked up. This house doesn't happen to have any laundry machines in the basement. But as we're on this, we're going to continue with plumbing. And plumbing is obviously another major component of a house. We have this here. This is a cast iron stack pipe. Basically the pipe that anything that's going out to your sewer, your septic, your bathrooms, your everything flows through this pipe. And the most important thing is that this cast iron is either fully intact or been switched over to PVC. PVC is that white piping that you see kind of in a more newer house in the basement. This house has a little bit of PVC. Actually, if you look down here to where my foot is, that's more durable, that lasts longer. It's a better quality plumbing product. Cast iron is older. It was used more in older homes, and this house has obviously a lot of cast iron. So kind of to recap, we saw the exterior, we saw the interior, we've been through plumbing, we've been through electrical, we've been through siding, we've been through basically all the main components of a house, and the purpose of this show was just to kind of give you an understanding of what's in a house and what should you look for if you're buying or selling or renting or whatever. Hopefully this adds some value. And with that, I will say this is the conclusion of another episode with All Things Real Estate. And we look forward to being back in the studio next week.